Now we see the bright side of TR with cases like Booker T. Washington, like I said before. TR actually asked Booker T. Washington for his advice on presidential appointments in the South, and that shows a very progressive president indeed. When southern states like South Carolina refused to allow black appointments by TR to serve in their states, TR insisted that they accept them. For example, Dr. William Crum was appointed Collector of Customs for the Port of Charleston, South Carolina. Well, South Carolina refused to allow Dr. Crum to take his seat, and so TR continued to submit his name to the Senate until South Carolina bended to TR's will. So TR was known for speaking softly but carrying a big stick, and in this case he carried the big stick for democracy. When Mississippi refused to allow his appointment, Mrs. Minnie Cox, to become the director of the post office in Indianola, Mississippi, TR closed the post office down in that city until Mississippi accepted Mrs. Minnie Cox. So you can see how TR was very good on symbolic actions that were of a progressive nature. TR busted 54 trusts to Taft's 90. Taft was TR's successor, William Howard Taft. But TR was the bigger trust buster because he was the first. It's always hardest to get the first one. Read your textbook for TR's work in the anthracite coal strike of 1902 and his struggle against their owner, George Baer. It's an interesting story that also shows TR as a progressive. Now, in terms of conservation, TR added 150 million acres to the 45 million protected acres of public lands. That's why he's on the face of Mount Rushmore with the other well-known presidents. Senators like Charles Fulton were outraged, but TR was the first conservationist president. He was also very good on consumer protection. He listened to the muckrakers, who were the crusading journalists who raked up the muck of American society and showed the underside of American government and life. For example, Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle, which was an expose of the horrible conditions in the meatpacking industry in Chicago. Sinclair was a socialist who wanted the government to take over the large businesses and industries and run them for the benefit of the people. But instead of following socialism, TR convinced Congress to pass the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act, which vastly improved regulatory protection of the American consumer. TR was the first president to identify a consumer interest lying between the interests of the working class and that of the corporations, and he fought for the consumers. Sinclair was very upset, of course, because Sinclair wanted socialism. Sinclair said, "I tried to turn America's head, and I only succeeded in turning America's stomach with his horrible depictions in the jungle." But TR was happy. Now, there's another side. TR was not always good to minorities. The only reason TR was appointing blacks to the South was because he wanted to build up a political support network in the South, and the only Republicans in the South were blacks. He wanted to have supporters in the South while he fought Mark Hanna for the Republican nomination in 1904. But Hanna died before that election took place, and that's when TR's black appointments stopped. So TR does not seem to have been appointing blacks for the right reasons. TR did not also believe in the ideals of the Declaration of Independence. He specifically said he did not believe that blacks and whites were equal. He hated the American Indians, Supposedly, he said, "I don't go so far as to say that the only good Indian is a dead Indian, but 9 out of 10 are," said Theodore Roosevelt, "and I wouldn't want to look too closely at the character of the 10th." With the Brownsville affair, Roosevelt really disappointed African Americans. Now, this is also discussed in your textbook, but to make a long story short, it involved American soldiers who were falsely accused of violence in Brownsville, Texas, many of whom had won the Congressional Medal of Honor. TR dishonorably discharged the entire black unit, and he did so without an investigation, simply because the black soldiers would not turn over one of their number who was supposedly guilty for violence in Brownsville. There was never any evidence that a single soldier was guilty, but TR made all of them pay and practiced the dark art of guilt by association. 2 black newspapers condemned TR, but it wasn't until 1972 that the Secretary of the Army apologized to those black soldiers. Of course, most of them were dead by then, but one of them, Doris Willis, was still living and objected only to the fact that he had not been given a fair hearing back in 1906. When we look to foreign policy, we see that TR continued the bad neighbor policy. His Latin American foreign policy was a disgrace. It involved, first of all, the Panama Canal and the acquisition of the land on which TR built the Panama Canal, or started the building process. This was a shameful example of America pursuing a very bad foreign policy because we trampled on our philosophical ideals unnecessarily in order to strengthen our security. Therefore, we hurt our relations with Latin America, even though the canal was good for our security in other ways. And it was particularly disgraceful because it started a trend in which the United States would behave very badly towards Latin American countries through much of the 20th century, soiling our relations with Latin America, endangering our security, in spite of the fact that the canal itself was good. The point is that the canal could have been acquired without destroying our relations with Latin America, but TR missed that opportunity with his disgraceful policy. Now, the obstacles to the building of a Panama Canal were a series of treaties which had granted the right to build the canal through Colombia or Panama, which is the same thing, in 1850. The Hay-Pauncefote Treaty abrogated the Clayton-Bulwer Treaty and gave the United States the right to dig in Panama, provided it could purchase the digging rights from a French canal company under Philippe Bounavaria, a Frenchman, which also was, and provided that it would purchase the right to build through Panama from Colombia. So there were those 2 obstacles. The digging rights were controlled by Philippe Bounavaria's French company, and they were demanding $109 million from the United States. And Colombia owned Panama at that time, and so there had to be a treaty with Panama. There was also one other obstacle, and that was yellow fever and malaria in Panama. So that would be a major obstacle to the building of the canal. In 1903, the Hay-Herran Treaty was contracted with Colombia. It was a reasonable treaty. The United States would lease a 6-mile wide zone in Panama, a 99-year lease, pay $10 million plus a $250,000 annual rent, and $40 million would go to the French Canal Company. But the Colombian Senate demanded $15 million more than just the $10 million. And TR got angry, and he cooked up a phony revolution in Panama at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, where Felipe Buenaventura telephoned TR on the details. So Buenaventura hired some thugs in Panama to, quote unquote, rise up on command. And a U.S. warship was sent to Panama to help these fake revolutionaries. On November the 6th, these so-called Panamanian revolutionaries, who were really French thugs hired by Buenaventura, announced the independent nation of Panama. 1 hour later, the United States recognized it, and within 2 weeks, Hay had signed a treaty with Felipe Buenaventura, which granted the United States a much better deal in building the canal. The U.S. got a 10-mile wide zone, which was larger, for $10 million, same rent, but the United States could administer the zone as if it were sovereign over it, which is virtual sovereignty. That is, Colombia by this time didn't have control of the land because TR had supported the thievery of Buenaventura, and the United States would act as a virtual sovereign over the territory. This was an illegal action. The United States tried to save face in 1921 by granting Colombia $25 million, more than they demanded in 1904. But what was really outrageous was the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, wherein Roosevelt declared that the United States could do in Latin America what the Monroe Doctrine said Europe could not do, which was interfere in the internal affairs of nations in the Western Hemisphere. Roosevelt, to add insult to injury, described those nations as uncivilized, and that really poisoned relations with Latin America.